Please welcome the chairman of Strong American Schools, former Colorado Governor Roy Romer.
Back today because I care deeply about the problem of education, and I like the direction that American Solutions is going in education. As you well know, I'm of a different political party than Newt, but we stand hand to hand in terms of what we want to try to do in this country educationally. I, in 14 minutes, want to lay out this case. You've already seen this film, the clips of the film. I just want to show you 3 short slides to say where we are in terms of global competition. We used to be at the top. 25, 30 years ago, we were at the top. We're no longer there now. If you could show the first slide. This is in math. If you compare us with the 30 industrial nations in the world, we're 25th from the top in math. Let me put that in Olympic terms since we just referred to them. If we had the Olympics of 15-year-olds in math a month ago, we wouldn't be on the podium with a silver, gold, or bronze. We'd be 25th in line. Now, the issue, as Doug Schoen said, if you're 25th in line now in the 8th grade in math, 10 years from now when you're trying to get a job, you're going to be 25th in line in terms of the talent you have for that job. Next slide. In science, we are 21st among 30 nations. And this, again, is a PISA test. It's a very reputable international test. And I'll come back to the importance of these kind of measurements. This is not where a great nation should be. And if you look closely, who's at the top? South Korea. You know, 20 years ago, they were at the bottom. Who's ahead of us? Poland, Canada, Finland, Singapore. This is not where a great nation should be. And let me give you just 1/3 chart, and that is on high school graduation. You'll know that 30 years ago, we were the top nation on high school graduation. Now we're 21st from the top. Now, there are many about what the problem is, but I think that it's clear that we have drifted back, and we need to really put some emphasis upon this as a priority in America. Now, the next issue is, what is the economic consequence? Doug Schoen mentioned some of that in his comments to you, but it is a very, very radical effect upon our gross national product and upon each individual family. I'll just give you one statistic. The Hoover Institute, Hanuchek, did some research in the last 5 to 10 years. It said if we could just bring our performance in the K-12 system up to the level of the 10 best nations in Europe, we would increase our gross national product about $1.5 trillion in 20 years. That's enough to pay for all of our educational costs. This has tremendous economic advantage. So that's the extent of the problem. That's the economic and personal consequence. What is the solution? In your document that you have for today, you have a list of 10 suggested approaches to this solution. I just want to emphasize 3. First, standards. It's very important as we as parents and as grandparents and as citizens in our community really take seriously how much we expect, the level of expectation of our own family members, our systems, and our state. We need to benchmark, and I'm again quoting Newt, we need to benchmark against the best in the world because that's who we'll be competing with for jobs and with economic gain. So let's just put this in very personal terms. You have a 4th grader. What do you want to know about that 4th grader in math? You want to think about this. You want that 4th grader's difficulty, the standard they're reaching for in that classroom, to fit so that when they get to the 8th grade, they can do algebra. When they get to the 11th grade, they can do algebra 2. And then when they enroll in college, they don't need to take a remedial course. Or if they don't go to college, that they can get a job which requires that level of math. Now, the problem here in standards is that we need to help every 4th grade teacher to know this is what the rest of the world is really doing and achieving. And let's be sure that you in your classroom are getting that done at that level. That's what standards are all about. Now let's just talk frankly about what's happening, and I'll use my own state, Colorado. In Colorado, we have a state standard, and we think that 85% of our youngsters in the 8th grade are proficient in English or in math. But if you take that same group of kids and test them against a more rigorous national test called the NAEP test, only 35% of our youngsters are proficient. We're just not being honest in telling them what it is that the condition of their education is. Now, when I go to a doc and I have an x-ray of my lung, I want to be told the truth. How healthy or unhealthy is my lung? Similarly in education, we want standards and assessments that tell us the honest truth about how well our youngsters are doing. I think it's a disgrace in this country that 1/3 of the kids that we send on to college and that are admitted to college have to take remedial courses. Now, the setting of standards is tremendously important, and we have an incoming president. One of the things I would suggest that president do within the first 30, 60, 90 days is call 50 states through the governor and the chief state school officer into the East Room of the White House. And the president can say, we have got to raise our collective expectation in education in this country. It shouldn't be dictated by the federal government. It should be done by state. But it's an expensive thing to design adequate and good, authentic tests. The president could say, I want 15 of you to band together and voluntarily agree, this is the standard we want our children to be, K to 12, and agree to benchmark it annually to the 10 best nations in the world. That puts the responsibility locally, but it gives it a benchmark which will hold it accountable. Then the federal government can come to the table and say, you have already decided how good is good enough. We're not dictating that to you. We will help you get there by giving you certain things to facilitate that. There are ways that we can get this done and not violate the state rights of this nation. But we simply now are not doing it. We're asleep. You saw that in the 2 million minute film, and you'll see it if you look carefully at all the statistics. So I wanted to say, here's the extent of the problem. Here's the economic consequence. There are many approaches, but we need to begin with expectations. And then we need to move to improving teaching. We need to look also at increased time. But before I end, I want to talk about what you as an individual can do. Again, in your brochure, there are some things that are suggested. That you can run for the school board, you can join the PTA, you can talk with your neighbors, you can spread with the word. But I'd like to add a few to that, and that is what you do with your own family. First thing you ought to do is turn the TV off when the kids are supposed to be studying. Let me say, and all those children should have homework. All of them should have homework. If you have a child in a school that's not bringing home homework to do, you ought to talk to that school. Let me tell you, we're not spending enough time. These youngsters can learn to a much higher level, but we need to help them get there. And I tell you, helping them have adequate time and focus on that is an important thing. Next, talk to these children. Talk to your children over the dinner table. Get a conversation going. Talk to them about the debate last night. Talk to them about the play that they're going to see at school the next week. The conversation with youngsters at all ages is tremendously important for their vocabulary acquisition, their linguistic skills, but dealing with problem solving and ideas. Next, you need to help them know the relevance of their homework and their work to the world out there. Let's just take fractions. You got a youngster at your dinner table that's in a 3rd or 4th grade, and they're doing fractions. Don't let them teach it in a mechanical way. Here's the formula, here's the calculator, solve the problem. Say this is something you deal with in the real world. And if you want to be very pragmatic, go buy a foot-long hot dog. Have them cut it in 2. bring it home and say, hey, how do we divide this among 3 of us? Just take that simple situation. Put the foot-long hot dog on the table. It's cut in 2. There are 3 people at the table and say, how do we make equal shares of this? Or try a pizza that's cut into 6 pieces and say, we now need to serve 9 equally. That's fractions in an applied mathematical way. It's teaching you what is the reason of proportionality and how you use it. And then take that youngster down to the Chevrolet garage and talk to the mechanic there and say why that math is necessary and important for him to do that job. Or take him to the agricultural dealer that's putting a location system on a tractor so it can drive down the road, rows of corn without an operator. And ask, why does this youngster need to have good fractions in the 4th grade? We as families need to bring this home very personally to our children and our grandchildren. Why? Because it is the key to their economic success, but even more important, it's the key to the good life. And I want to close with this. First, I've tried to lay out the problem. Secondly, I wanted to say what is the economic consequence to the nation. Third, I wanted to say of the solutions, I wanted to particularly point toward standards, better teaching, and more time. But finally, I wanted to say this is a very personal thing. My wife and I have 7 children and 18 grandchildren. You scratch me deep and say, what do I really care about? I care about those youngsters being given the tools to be able to seek out truth as they live their life, to seek out how they can relate to this world and give something to it. I want those children to have the intelligence to know what was the history of this world before they were born, to know who are the people that occupy it now, to know what are the beliefs, the hopes and the fears of those folks. Because we're not ever going to live in peace with the Muslim world and with others who differ with us unless we have a populace that is intelligent enough to sort out not what just is right and wrong, but to understand how other people view it, maybe view it differently, and how we can accommodate with them. Otherwise, we can't survive in this world. Education is the key to the good life. And I think in this nation, in the spirit of tripartisanship, we can make it really improve. We need to start by raising our expectations. We need to continue by improving our teaching. We need to continue by finding more time for students. But finally, we need to have a personal responsibility that everybody we work with, we need to be a mentor to them. And in addition, we need to be willing to be mentored by them. Education is a two-way process. Let's get with it. Let's make it work. For America, we need it. We need it personally. Thank you very much.
Please welcome the former superintendent